So this session, we will be looking at academic writing. I will be sharing with you some good examples of academic writing, sentences which are available to you indeed, which you can use in your text, in your thesis. The sections that I am going to be sharing with you are actually available to you already if I have not mentioned earlier. So we have here in your master thesis part 1 workspace a folder called sources and useful links. If you have already, you may have already visited, the last link that we have here is called the academic phrase book. This is a very good, I find it very useful, shared by the University of Manchester, and it's organized very nicely because remember you have 5 chapters. So the introduction chapter, you know, if you are looking for some fancy words that you would like to use, you would be looking at introducing your work. We'll go there quite soon. For your literature review chapter, you will find nice phrases from referring to sources. For your methodology chapter, you will find nice phrases from the describing method section. And then here we have the results and finally the discussion. So very nicely organized according to your chapters, you can find phrases. I'm not going to go through all of these. This is really an ocean over here, but I will be sharing some of those which I kind of find important. Now, in the introduction chapter, one of the things that you want to do is to convince the reader that the research that you will be doing is of high importance, that you need to really do this kind of a research. So you may say this research is important because X, Y, Z, right? You need to always answer whenever you are making a choice. The first choice you make is the choice of the topic. You need to share why that is important. So when you click on this, establishing the importance of the topic, instead of saying this topic is highly important, you can have here a variety of words. Fundamental has a pivotal role, vital role, etc., etc. So check here. Do not always write it is important. Yes, this is important. You know, don't use in your text similar wordings over and over. You will find synonyms of keywords in this area. And of course, you want to convince us that what you are doing, you know, is also new. So here, if we think about you have done in the proposal, but of course nobody will have your proposal in the thesis, so we will read the thesis. So here you can find many things about, for example, identifying the lack of previous research. So you will be saying there is little published data on this. No previous study has investigated X. So you have a good vocabulary when you want to suggest that, okay, we need this kind of research because there is little research that has been conducted on this topic. And, you know, instead of saying that, you can have a variety of other sayings from this area. Then, of course, you will be stating the purpose of your research. Okay, what is your objective? So here, again, you find lots of options that you can use. So don't repeat the same thing. Use the variety that is available here. So we can find for many things related to the introduction chapter, many possibilities in this Manchester phrase book. Same goes with, for example, when you are doing your literature review chapter. So this is the chapter that you are currently working on. So here, when you are doing your literature review and when you are trying to, in your analysis, when you are trying to synthesize literatures with each other, so we see here they are closely linked, appear to be closely linked, positively related, unambiguous relationship between X and Y. So use these kinds of wordings when you are looking for, if sometimes when you are, we will also have a language check, by the way. So when you are, let's say, I would say that you don't need to wait when your whole thesis is ready. We have a specific person dedicated to us who will be supporting your academic language. So you will get some feedback related to the use of YAML reporting instructions in your text, and you will also get feedback related to the language. So maybe this is of a less issue for some, but more for others. How to write academically, I would say that we shouldn't wait until your full thesis is ready, because the language check person will not be reviewing the whole text and telling you, okay, fix all these things, that's not the point, and they don't have the time for that. What they will do is they will review a sample section from your thesis and say that, okay, these are the kinds of mistakes that you are doing, so fix those in the rest of the thesis as well. That means the following. I would send text to language check when you have, I would say, about 20-30 pages of text. That would be a suitable time, because you get the feedback. Because sometimes if you have the habit, you may be repeating the same mistake over and over, but you get the feedback. Hopefully you change the habit, and then you don't need to fix the whole thesis afterwards. So one other important page that needs to be checked at the very end is the abstract page. So when the whole thesis is ready, you should also send your abstract to language check. Of course, your thesis supervisor will be the person to suggest, if you are ready to send. You should get the feedback from your thesis supervisor and revise the abstract accordingly. And when that is ready, the last thing to do is also to send your abstract for language check. Now, the Finnish students, they need to also write an abstract in Finnish language. So make sure that you also have your Finnish abstract ready when it goes to language check. Unfortunately, this is not needed for the foreign students. Unfortunately, most of our committee members are Finns, so they read the Finnish abstract rather than the English abstract, which is a bit of a it may be, not necessarily is, it may be a bit of a problematic, because
but you submit both of the abstracts.
Yes, you submit both abstracts.
So you the English first.
You submit both abstracts, English and the Finnish, of course, very understandably. they are biased to read the abstract in their native language. So you need to be very careful when you are writing your Finnish abstract.
From the past sort of experiences, because from chemistry, writing the things in Finnish was very difficult.
I agree with you.
Everything what you read, everything on the language of the science is in English. So then you start to put it Finnish. It's not that simple.
I agree with you, and you are not asked to make a one-to-one direct translation.
No.
That doesn't help either. The Finnish language has its own logic, so you need to write like a new, starting from, of course you have the main ideas, what you are going to include, but how you structure the...
So it doesn't have to be translation.
No, that wouldn't be the right way to approach it.
Just the idea.
That you need to write it in the Finnish structure, but the idea should be the same.
Yeah.
Am I the only one in this group who has this problem? Yeah, I think so.
Probably. But don't worry, in the Finnish groups there are many others who will have...
Okay.
No, actually they will be writing the thesis mostly in Finnish.
Yes, and they will write only the abstract
in Finnish.
In English, but the rest
they will,
will
yes.
be in Finnish.
That's right. So they will write the abstract in English?
They will write the abstract in English.
English, okay.
But, it's...
I see. So
it's a little bit different.
It's... And the committee members will read still the Finnish one, so...
No,
So here we see about when you are providing a review of the literature, what kind of phrases that you should be using. Let's have a look what I have been highlighting over here that I would like to especially show you. So actually this has changed a bit. The printed version I have here is a bit different than the online version. So you will probably find things at different places, like what I see here. To date, several studies have found, have reported, have shown that, have indicated that, have suggested, have demonstrated that. So there are many different words that you can use in academic writing. So, for example, if you are referring to some certain reference, you can have the whole text, and at the end you can have in parentheses the source, the citation. Now, remember, you can have the citation for one sentence or for even the whole paragraph, and then where that comes matters. Is it referring to the whole paragraph or one sentence? Is it after the period or before the period? But that's not the only way. You can also start like with, if let's say Smith 2000 is the author, then you can start like, for example, Smith 2000 identifies, shows, demonstrates, etc., etc. So it can also come in the beginning of the paragraph, or in her introduction or in her analysis, Smith identifies, etc., etc.
According to the Smith 2008.
That can also be according to Smith 2008. That can also be. And here we have as Smith notes, as Smith argues, writes, observes, points out, reminds. So
different vocabulary.
And I would also encourage you, when you in academic writing, I would say there are two perspectives. The traditional old perspective is encouraging or demanding the use of passive voice. While recently, more and more, we encourage, or the academic writing encourages us to use the active voice. Now, you are free to use the I. So, for example, when you are describing in the methodology chapter, you can use I, blah, blah.
Mhm.
But I would be skeptical still about that. You can avoid that easily. So let's say I use the case study methodology. I use the case study approach in my thesis. You can easily say, even without going into the passive voice, the approach in this thesis is case study.
Or author has used the approach.
Don't say author.
Okay.
Don't even say the author.
Okay.
And avoid also using, for example, we,
Okay.
us,
Myself, my
myself, my. I would, try to be neutral,
neutral. Okay.
but you can still use active voice even though you are neutral.
Mhm.
One thing to perhaps discuss and emphasize here is the use of present tense versus past tense. So let me ask you, in your thesis, when you start writing, do you use present tense or past tense?
Past tense.
You use past tense.
Yes.
I have done this, I have done that.
That's how it should be, because let's say I'm doing an interview. I will be doing the interview, but when I write it, interviewees were. So it has to be in past tense, right? Because when the reader is going to read it, it should be in the past. That's my logic. Might be I'm wrong because I don't know.
I am more of a, let's say you can use both, but at the right places.
Okay.
In the introduction chapter, you wouldn't start with the aim of this thesis was to blah blah. I wouldn't use past tense in the introduction. I would use the present tense.
Yeah.
Also in the methodology chapter, when you say the research approach is case study, not was case study, because it is still, I mean, it will be also case study even after 20 years,
Yeah.
But then in the literature review chapter, when you are saying in the literature review chapter, when you are saying, for example, Smith 2008, would you say states that blah blah blah, points out that blah blah blah, or has pointed out, has stated? I would still use the present tense there, even though he has stated that in 2008,
Yes.
10 years ago. I would still, he states that blah blah blah, I would keep it there. If anywhere I would use the past tense, it would be in the discussion chapter. When you start the discussion chapter, you can state like the aim of this thesis was, in the beginning. Now you have finished it, you are now discussing it. You can there say that we have the results are blah blah blah, but the aim was. So there perhaps you can use the past tense. I am, of course it's a matter of taste. The problem would be the following. If you are in your text variably using, let's say, one paragraph starts in the present tense and then there is some past tense and then you come back to present tense, that is problematic. And if any choice, I would encourage you to stick with the present tense.
Okay.
That's, there you don't make a mistake.
Okay.
If you start using the past tense, then, I get confused sometimes when I am writing if I go into past tense.
I'm just like wondering about the analysis or result part, because over there, when we are doing like, let's say, qualitative interview with the interviews, in analysis, we need to like how we can do that in present tense or past tense, because the interview has been done.
Mhm.
And now we are like doing an analysis. So in analysis, the like interviews, feedback, how we can write it. It should be in present or past.
I think you can keep it in present.
Present tense, okay.
You can keep it in present. I think it is possible.
Mhm.
Yes, the results show that.
These and these, yeah. The interviews has been okay.
But of course, in the methodology chapter, when you are going to say exactly when you did the interviews. So if you have a sentence that the interview, I had an interview with, let's say, Mr. X
Mhm.
on September the 25th,
Mhm.
2018,
Mhm.
then of course you will use past tense,
Past tense,
because you
yes.
say exactly
Mhm.
that,
That means,
sentence you cannot have present tense. But otherwise, when you are saying Mr. X, of course you can also, Mr. X stated during the interview, that could also be past tense because the interview took place, we know the date,
Mhm.
but you can keep to a large extent when you are analyzing and presenting your findings, they could be present tense.
Present tense, okay.
So limit the use of past tense.
Past tense, yeah.
Limit the use of past tense to situations where you are 100% sure that, okay, this should be. If you are in conflict,
Mhm.
if you are not sure,
Mhm. Just
choose the present tense.
Okay.
That's my suggestion. Now, when I look at, for example, the let's say the Manchester phrase book, they are the old school. So here they are using the passive voice,
Mhm.
and they are also using. They have changed. Here, as you see, they have used
Yeah.
the passive voice and also
Past tense.
past tense. A case study approach was used to allow blah blah. But then this method is particularly useful.
Present tense.
So it was,
Mhm.
in the past you chose it. The choice was done in the past,
Mhm.
but it is useful. You don't say it was useful.
Mhm.
So for the choice that they have made, they have used here the past tense.
The benefits of this approach is, yeah.
But I could,
There's a lot of places they have used almost everywhere present tense, I can say. The design.
the choices, you see,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So they have used their past tense for the choices,
Mhm.
but still, even for the choices, you can use the present tense. This for this sentence, you can say the approach in this thesis is case study. It is particularly useful in studying blah blah blah. So you can avoid the use of the past tense.
Mhm.
I'm checking the results section. So here, when we have results section, is the section where you also present your results in tables or in figures. So table 1 shows, figure 1 shows, compares, presents, provides. So those are the vocabulary that they have been using, illustrates. And of course, you can also write them in as shown in figure 1. So instead of saying table 1 shows,
Mhm.
as shown in figure 1,
Mm.
Now perhaps I'm checking also now in the discussion, you would be using, however, you may be using contrary to expectations. So if you find something surprising, contrary to expectations, surprisingly, so if you find some findings that were surprising to you, surprisingly, if your results are in line with earlier research, then these results are consistent with, these results are in line with, or these results confirm, support. These are the vocabularies that you may be using in your text. So the level of academic writing, the language, that is one of the criteria that we use in assessing your thesis.
Yeah.
That is the one side. And the other side is how well you apply YAML reporting instructions. So stick with the instructions. When you are making a figure, when you are making a table, make sure that the captions are in the right place. Use citations and list of references according to the reporting instructions. So that is one thing. How well you organize your text, that is the second thing. And of course, the use of academic language, that is how well is the English. Are you making grammar mistakes? So that is also one of the criteria that we pay attention when we assess your. This is especially important when when we look at when we assess if your grade is in between two numbers. So if it is 3.5, so this, how well you have applied,
Makes a difference.
that can affect the decision of the committee and also the reviewers. So if you are ambitious for the scholarship, pay attention to these, and I'm sure you will manage. It's not a big thing. And of course, we will give feedback, we will give support, and when you have some text enough that can be taken as a sample, you will be provided from our language center the support for the language. And I hope that this is also to an extent helpful for you to make a variety, diversity in your writing. So I'm sure that you will be managing well. Any questions? Do you have anything in your mind?
I think this is good.
Yeah.
It's not like, because very often you would according to this, accordingly, and
this is the first time I'm seeing.
Really
in last few
big,
videos, this
better.
was not there. I couldn't able to find this one in last videos. Your last videos.
I don't know. Great. So in that case, I think I can stop the recording at this point.